Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Monday, October 7th, 2019. We're here for the purpose of the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council. It is 7:30. We don't have a clock. It's 7:30-ish.
It's 7:34.
Okay. I'd ask you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Clerk Malone, I'd ask you to call the roll, please. I'll do it after.
Joyder.
Here.
Sabatino.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Bram.
Here.
Polumsky.
Here.
York.
Here.
Paludo. Absent. Park.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Kennedy. Absent. Honquest.
Here.
Brennan.
Here.
Molnar.
Here.
12 present and 2 absent.
12 present, 2 absent. We have a quorum. Before we get started, I just want to say a couple of words. You'll notice we have bunting here and we have bunting outside. I'm sure most of you know that we lost our city clerk, Patty Spencer, after a long battle with cancer. Patty battled cancer for over 27 years, which is a testament because she wasn't defined by it. It tells me that she won. But we share this loss with her husband, Byron, and her daughter, Amy. Patty moved here to the Chicagoland area in 1981, shortly after, married Byron, and then retired from AT&T. Took an early retirement package, and shortly thereafter started her civics career, not only volunteering, where she volunteered at the Elmhurst Hospital and became a member of the Guild, but after a while, she liked it so much, she decided to run for clerk. She ran in 2005, and I believe was in the middle of her fourth term when she passed away. Anyway, if you ever had the pleasure of knowing Patty, she was one of the most dedicated people I ever knew. Took her job very serious, and she meant what she said, and she said what she meant. And you always knew, I think everyone here on the dais, and anybody who ever knew Patty, you knew where you stood with Patty at all times. There was never a question, good, bad, or indifferent. She would tell you like it is. I was the beneficiary of her counsel my entire 12 years as an elected official, and on a pretty regular basis I would stop in her office and ask her how things were going, specifically with my job, and any information or encouragement that she had, and believe me, she always had plenty to say, and it was worth every minute I spent with her. She was a true champion, though. We are going to miss her. And you can read about her online. She really gave her life to this community. It was my pleasure. Certainly her and Byron live in town, but her daughter Amy, who I believe is from Texas, came in with the 3 grandkids, and it was great to see them. And really the whole community. I want to thank everyone from the Alderman Funeral Home and everybody that's in the city who made it a special day. After her service at Alderman Funeral Home, she actually had a procession through town, and there was people on the streets holding their hearts and waving when she went by. I know Patty would have been pleased. So I would ask that you all join me in a moment of silence for the passing and the remembrance of Clerk Spencer. Okay, thank you very much. On to agenda item 3, public hearing. We have a public hearing. Occasionally we do this by law, have a hearing within our meeting, and I'm going to read from a very tight script. A public hearing regarding the proposed renewal of the cable franchise agreement with Comcast of Illinois 6 LLC. This proceeding is hereby commenced pursuant to the requirements of the Federal Cable Communications Policy Act and the request for the renewal of the franchise agreement of Comcast Illinois 6 LLC, a current cable television franchise in the city of Elmhurst. Notice of this proceeding was published in a newspaper circulated in the city and in the same manner as all other items on this evening's council agenda. The purpose of this hearing is to afford the public the opportunity to offer comment and insight in order to identify future cable-related community needs and interests of the residents of the city of Elmhurst, and review the performance of Comcast of Illinois under its current cable television franchise. Does any alderman have any questions or comments with respect to either the future cable television-related needs of the city of Elmhurst, the performance of Comcast of Illinois under its current cable television franchise agreement, or the proposed renewal of said franchise? Any alderman? Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I'd just like to make everybody aware, you probably saw it on a few finance agendas over the course of the past few months. The committee has gone over the agreement and with the help of city staff, made some really good and substantive changes to the agreement as we discussed it over the many meetings. So I think this is a really great outcome for the city of Elmhurst.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, I open the floor to comments from the public with respect to either the future cable television-related needs to the city of Elmhurst, the performance of Comcast Illinois under its current cable television franchise agreement, or the proposed renewal of said franchise. To be clear, we had a sign-up sheet in the back to speak at public forum. This is not it. That's for the rest of the agenda. But if you would like to speak tonight about this cable agreement, please raise your hand now, and you can make your way to the microphone. Anyone out there? That's my way of saying we're going to have public comment within our normal confines of our meeting after this. Is there anyone out there in the public who wants to provide any comments regarding this cable franchise agreement? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. I don't believe we have received any written comments. Is there any written comments from the audience that wish to be submitted at this time regarding the cable agreement? Seeing none, at this time, there being no further comments from the public, the city will take the comments and matter under advisement. I will entertain a motion to adjourn this hearing regarding the proposed renewal of the cable television franchise agreement. Motion by Alderman York, second by Alderman Mulliner. Voice vote okay?
Yes.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda item 3 is finished. Public hearing is over. On to agenda item 4, receipt of written communications from the public. Does anybody at this time have any written communications that they want to submit? If so, please raise your hand so I can identify you. Any written communications? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to public forum, agenda item 5. This is an opportunity for anybody in the audience to address the council on any item you so choose. When your name is called, we ask that you make your way over to the microphone to my right, your left, over there next to Chief Ruth. We ask that you state your name as we are recording this. For the record, state your name. Your address is optional. We ask that you direct your comments directly to the chair and don't address other folks in the audience. Out of respect for work that we have to get done here this evening and respect for other people that may want to speak, we ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. I will keep time. If you run over your 3 minutes, I will give you a gentle reminder and ask you to wrap up your comments. Clerk Malone, at this time, has anybody signed up for public forum?
Yes.
Great.
Daniel Mazaraz.
Good evening. First of all, sorry for the loss of your clerk.
Thank you. Name first, please.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Majash.
Great.
Evening. I've lived in town here for about 2 years now. I studied supply chain management and decided to stay here as the environment was quite inviting. I find myself now the owner of an electric vehicle, and while I did come to a council meeting about a year back to address the naive concern of expanding the charging network here in town, I do find myself now far more advised and aware of what the network already looks like, the spots available to both the community and the employees here. And I did have the fortune this year of surviving a pretty serious car crash here in town as well. I was attended to by Chief Ruth's police officers pretty intensely, and now find myself battling both my building as well as the local slowly expanding business community at the lower level of the building across the street, occupying those spots. And I really, I'll fight that on my own, and my building continues to deny me to even place electric charging in my own rented vehicle spots. I find myself really seeing an opportunity for the village to perhaps facilitate far more current EV ADA accessible spots in these spots that the city's paying for both the power and the space for. So I would propose that perhaps the city look into far more accommodating EV size spots for potential vans and ADA accessibility, as the spots finding themselves across the street are only find within a 36-foot gap that doesn't even really fit 4 vehicles. So we're crammed into what's available and stashed between 2 dumpsters. So if you could please find it in your budget or considerations, perhaps for even ADA or expanding the thought of that network, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Claude Pagache.
Claude Pagach, 566 West Gladys. Since the last meeting, a couple things have changed in this town. We got a school board that has got $165 million worth of projects. Park District all of a sudden needs $105 million. They got some wonderful ideas. And we do have the city's general obligation bonds, plus their, shall we say, line of credit that seems to be growing on a regular basis. The unfortunate thing about it is the city voted in for the school. Park District's going to have the people vote in for the Park District. But what they fundamentally forget is, after they voted in and this all develops, now the costs start building up. The personnel, the maintenance, the insurance. That's not talked about. And the amazing thing about it is, on all these developments, the people wanted it. That's why it was voted in. There was a whole crowd that showed up at all their meetings. Let alone they have to hire somebody to send out requests. Do the people really want it? With those two, if they pass, plus what the city owns in general obligation bonds, rough estimate, you're over $300 million in debt, the resident. That leaves this town. Doesn't leave it in a bulk, but it leaves it every year. If you don't pay it, you won't have your 4-star rating. But it's that extra cost after it's all done. The personnel, the maintenance. And the budgets go up every year. This year's budget for the city will go up, the budget for the Park District will go up, the budget for the school district will go up. And in the future, because of this fancy development that I want and the people are demanding, I'm stuck with increases. I wish our legislative bodies would take one thing into account. You're taxing the people. You got to hope their income comes in the way you envision it. You haven't helped the cause, especially this council, with all their TIFs and all the money they've given away.
Mr. Pagache, could you wrap up your comments, please?
What I'm saying, Mayor, is this. The people in this town, you better hope with the rest of the guys that are elected that they have the income that you people want to take from them. Because if they don't, this thing's going to fall apart like a deck of cards. They do have mortgages of their own, but the mortgages our elected bodies are putting on them are far greater than any mortgage you'll ever see.
Meredith Rathert.
Hi, my name is Meredith Rathert. I live at 726 Eastland Street. This is my son Colin. He's a first grader at Conrad Fisher. I'm here to speak about my safety concerns for my child. On May 2nd of this year, my son and I were nearly hit by a car who was turning right from Wilson to Victory Parkway towards Churchville. The driver wasn't paying attention, didn't come to a stop at the stop sign, and would have hit us had I not slammed my hand down on her hood. If I weren't there crossing in the crosswalk with my son, he surely would have been hit. This is not a new issue, and we're not the only ones who have experienced these dangerous circumstances at the intersection of Wilson and Victory. We have no crossing guard. I understand this is complicated by the fact that Conrad Fisher is in unincorporated Elmhurst. However, we're Elmhurst residents who pay Elmhurst taxes, and all the other schools are provided crossing guards through the police department. It is simply unacceptable that the city not be involved in the safety of Elmhurst students walking to school at Conrad Fisher. We have a group of 42 parents and caregivers who have organized and are concerned about this issue right now. Some of us are here today. We need a high visibility crossing, and we need a crossing guard at this intersection. We will not accept that parents or teachers have to volunteer for this. That is not the case in other schools in this district where the same taxes are paid by other residents. Beyond this extremely dangerous intersection, we also have a dangerous journey to school in our incorporated portion of Elmhurst where we live. We travel through 6 intersections with no yield signs, no stop signs, and no sidewalks. We're too close to be eligible for busing. The law is that when there are no signs, the first person at the intersection go first. However, motorists who travel down North End, Fullerton, and Belden do not stop at these intersections. It's confusing for motorists, and accidents happen. We have witnessed several at the end of our block. I ask that you imagine walking with your 6-year-old or your 1-year-old down these streets where motorists don't comply with the laws, they speed, and they cut extremely close to you as they pass. A simple walk to the park is frightening. We need sidewalks and we need signs at every intersection. The lives of the children on the north side are just as valuable as the lives of the children who live on the south side. Thank you.
Natalie Hantosh.
Hi, my name is Brian Hantosh. Natalie's my wife. I'm going to speak on her behalf. I'd like to talk about getting sidewalks over by 689, or my address, 689 North Indiana Street, which would be east of York, north of 290, and south of Grand, or south of the power lines, I should say. I just want to state how dangerous it's becoming to walk around the neighborhood. I know this is a topic that's been talked about for the last 20 years, if not longer. But the fact is, it's not the same as it was 20 years ago. If you're walking down the street 20 years ago, you could hear that Impala roaring behind you from a block away. Nowadays, you'll be walking down the street with your, pregnant woman pushing her kid in a stroller, and there's a Prius rolling up behind you, and you cannot hear it because the eco-friendly cars nowadays, they're virtually silent. People are texting while driving, and let's face it, everybody nowadays is in a hurry to get somewhere. Where we live, there's a lot of construction on York and North Avenue. And if you got to get from A to B, you got to get to or from work, pick up your kids, take them to another spot, wherever you gotta go. People are bypassing the main roads, and they're coming. You're going from 290 or 294 on York, and you gotta get somewhere between York and Grand. You're gonna cut through our neighborhoods. And if you're coming through that one area, and someone behind you or in front of you is going 30, but you wanna go 35, you're gonna go another route. So now there's multiple people possibly speeding, not paying attention, driving through these neighborhoods with yield signs, some not yield signs, rolling through stop signs, and they're driving through these neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks, because in their neighborhoods, they don't have to worry about people on streets because their neighborhoods have sidewalks. They don't understand why our area is the only area in Elmhurst that does not have sidewalks. Sidewalks were put in on Industrial Drive. It's on one side of the street, both ways. You can clearly get from York to Grand on Industrial Drive. I do not believe that the cost was split between the owners and the city. Unless I am wrong, I'll try to look up that information later. I couldn't find that. So I'm assuming that the city paid for it. People that work over there drive to work, they drive to lunch, and they drive home. They don't have children walking to and from school there. They don't have pregnant women walking their babies in strollers with another kid next to them walking through the neighborhood. I recently had back surgery. It was a month ago that I had my surgery. My rehab is to walk. That's what they tell me, walk. So I'm trying to walk on these neighborhood streets with my daughter who wants to ride her bike, who's 8 years old and just learned how to ride her bike, with my wife, a new dog, and my special needs son that goes to Madison. And it's hard when you're trying to pay attention to all this stuff, and if a car rolls up behind me that's not paying attention, I have no shot at getting out of the way. I have no shot. An old elderly woman walking her dog that may have a hearing aid in has no shot. A pregnant woman has no shot. So it's not only important that we get sidewalks there, at least a path from school to school somewhere. It's not only important, it's crucial for the safety of our children and the families that live there and the taxpayers, which I believe pay the same taxes percentage-wise as everybody else in Elmhurst. That's about it. Thank you very much.
Todd Benson.
EF Todd Benson, 391 North River Glen here in Elmhurst. I live with my wife Lena. We've lived here since 1994. I'm a business owner and try to help here in town. And I don't have to, but I'm also not secretive. I'm an appointed official in DuPage County, standing on the Ethics Commission as a commissioner. It's been 8-9 years. My comments tonight are really a reinforcement and a thank you for each and every one of you just for continuing to do your job and be an elected official. Not only do we have public workers who support a community, Elmhurst, but our elected officials really get down to the grassroots. And I call that to your attention because of my travels this summer and in my choice of wanting to take in the media of our country. I'm reminded these are really some strange times, and the leadership of our nation and the way things are done just seems abnormal sometimes. Maybe not abnormal, maybe it's just times change. I don't know. Phil Rizzuto told me change is everything. But back to Elmhurst and why I came tonight, besides to show something to someone, is just simply to say thank you for some level of decorum. And at least in my community, things can be discussed, things are understood, there's right and wrong, and there are ways to go about things. And I thank you for that and keep doing a good job.
Earl Boardwine.
My name is Pearl Borderline, and I currently reside at 717 North Willow. My child goes to Comrade Fisher, is in first grade, and I'll have a child going into kindergarten next year. My concern is that the fact there are no sidewalks on our side of Elmhurst. Since our school offers a dual language program, there has been an increase in bus and traffic, and the principal has been advising those who live within walking distance, which is 1.5 miles, to walk to minimize this congestion. Here I have a printed copy of the District 205 safe route and bike route to go to Comrade Fisher. Since we live on the south side of the power lines, we have no sidewalks. So I would like to have sidewalks, at least if it's not possible to have a bike or pedestrian lane printed out. Now, the dual language program is they want a 6-year commitment from the parents. So I do not see a decrease of congestion of buses or cars currently going there. And considering there's already a waiting list for this year, and this is the 2nd year in a row, so I can only see more parents trying to get into this dual language program. So I highly recommend either sidewalks or at least a lane for our children to get from the south side of Elmhurst to Comrade Fisher. Thank you.
Okay, that's it for public forum for those who signed up. Is there anybody who did not have an opportunity to sign up on our sign-in sheet before the meeting but wishes to address the council at this time? If so, please raise your hand. I just want to get a count first. I see one. Anyone else? Mr. Perry?
Thank you. Bill Perry, 300 East Oneida, Elmhurst. I've been here since 2000. So on the agenda tonight is the recommendation submitted by the Development and Planning Zoning Committee, DPZ. I attended all their meetings, and I want to thank the members of that committee for listening to me about opening a dispensary in Elmhurst. They listened to a lot of the facts and hopefully read the documents I gave. I've read the recommendation, and to be frank, I'm not naive. I don't expect this council to approve a dispensary in Elmhurst. I really don't. But I like tilting at windmills, so here I go. I submit the basis for the recommendation from the DPC committee is unreasonable. The basis, one, as put in the recommendation, is that the law itself is confusing and ambiguous. Though I don't agree with that premise, I think the city attorney has recognized that the legislature will be addressing whatever ambiguities are in the law as it is right now. And saying that we don't like the law, and we don't want to deal with it, you have to deal with it, okay? It's the law of the state of Illinois. Pritzker ran on this premise that he was going to legalize marijuana, and the majority of Illinois people voted for him. The law says you cannot unreasonably prohibit dispensaries. That's what the law says. And the basis in the recommendation, I think, are unreasonable. The first one is the concern of all cash business. They're all cash business, not by choice. Cash is king. All Elmhurst businesses deal with cash. The 2 vape shops, the cigar shop, the cigarette outlet, the liquor stores, the bars. You may see where I'm going with this. Cash is a legal tender for all debts, public and private. It says so right on the dollar bills. You may not like dealing with cash, but cash is acceptable tender in the United States. In fact, and for all you economists, here's the joke. The US dollar is the gold standard in the world economy. It is everything that everybody traces the US dollar because it's the strongest currency. And so rejecting a business because it only deals with cash, I think, is unreasonable. And if it's the standard, if we reject businesses because they only deal with cash, then we're going to have to get rid of Rock the Block. Because the last time I checked, the only way I could get a beer at Rock the Block is I have to pay cash for tickets. And the dispensaries are going to be a lot more scrupulous with their cash because they are under such great scrutiny. Let's see. It's illegal under federal law. Why? Racism. Don't take my word for it. Look it up in the Encyclopedia Britannica. From 1910, the Mexicans began to immigrate into the United States due to the Mexican Revolution. They were bringing cannabis. They actually changed the term to marijuana to make it more exotic and scary speaking. In the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act made it all illegal, and the person pushing that law was the director of the Federal Narcotics Bureau. That law was ruled unconstitutional in 1969. Controlled Substances Act comes out and puts marijuana as a Schedule I drug similar to heroin and LSD. You ask any doctor, it's not similar to heroin or LSD. Okay, so the fact that it may be illegal under federal law is unreasonable.
Mr. Perry, I'd ask you to wrap up your comments,
Okay,
please.
one last thing. And it's not a fit for Elmhurst. I could see that. We have 2 vape shops, a cigar shop, a cigarette outlet, liquor stores. We have bars. The dispensary is going to fit right in. And then you can go to the ice cream shop and the candy store and the restaurants. It happens. We even have an axe throwing bar. Elmhurst is hip. Dispensaries are going to be hip. So my only request is the reasons for prohibiting a dispensary as recommended by the DPC committee and all their good work. They did great work. I think is unreasonable, and I would recommend that this council say we should try it. Allow to have a dispensary in Elmhurst. Thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else? Seeing none, that concludes public forum for this evening. Any announcements from the dais? Okay. On the consent agenda, at this time, is there any item on the consent agenda any Alderman wishes to have pulled? Vote no or provide further comment. Alderman Bram.
7.5, 7.11, 7.17.
7.5, 7.11, 7.17, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Anyone else? I'll now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items 7.5, 7.11, and 7.17. Motion by Alderman Bram, second by Alderman York. Clerk Malone.
Joyner.
Aye.
Sabatino. Aye. Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Bram.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Saludo, absent. Park.
Aye.
Levin. Aye. Kennedy, absent. Honquest.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Mulner.
Aye.
12 ayes, 0 nays, and 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Consent agenda minus items 7.5, 7.11, 7.17 is approved. On to the first item pulled, 7.5. I would ask Clerk Malone to read the recommendation.
Therefore, the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee recommended that the City Council approve the applicant's request for a variation. The city attorney is hereby directed to prepare the necessary documents for City Council approval. Signed, Michael Honquest, Mark A. Molnar, and Vice Chair, and Bob Dunn.
Okay, to put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Honquest, second by Alderman Mulliner. Alderman Honquest, your report.
Thanks, Mayor. I want to start, after I reviewed this report today, I think we probably could have added a little bit of color that would hopefully explain this a little bit better, so I'm going to try and do it very quickly here. But effectively what this case is about is we have a business, Fees Roofing, that currently has a sign that is 35 square feet. And according to the owner, but unrecognizable by us, supposedly had a permit when this was originally installed some time ago. What they've come to ask us for today is to actually reduce that signage from 35 to 22 square feet on a wall on their building. It's in an area that is kind of industrial section, so there's not really any residential concerns with it. And they're actually going to, can you see this? I know you can't see this, but there's actually just a section of the top right corner of the building that they're putting the signage. So that's what they came forward to ask for. So I'm looking at the notes. It's just an overall reduction as well in the square footage on the building at large. So both the commission and our committee looked at it, and given the fact that we're actually reducing signage and it's staying consistent with what was already there, we approved it. So we ask for your support. Thank you.
Great. Comments? Alderman Bram.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm hesitant with my comments because my understanding was that this was a request for 40% over current zoning regulations from a maximum of 50 square feet allowed to what the requester, the petitioner, is asking for is 80 square feet of signage, which would mean a 40% increase. So from what Alderman Honquest just stated, and please, Alderman Honquest, correct me if I'm incorrect, but we're saying that they're over 80 square feet today, and they'd be reducing it to 80 square feet in total.
Thanks, Mayor. Their total today is 93.4 square feet. The new total will be 80.4 square feet on the building. The specific size of this, which you can actually see, Alderman Bram, because you're close enough, is reducing it from that size to this size.
Any other comments or questions?
No further.
Clerk Malone, I ask you to call the vote.
Joyner.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Bram.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Saludo, absent. Park.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy, absent. Honquest.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Mulner.
Aye.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Agenda item 7.5 is approved. Agenda item 7.11, this is a report out of PANS. Clerk Malone to read the recommendation.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Affairs and Safety Committee that the City Council approve the installation of the new traffic control signage at the Niagara Avenue, Hillcrest Avenue, and Niagara Avenue, Stratford Avenue intersections as recommended above. The committee recommends the city attorney be authorized to prepare the necessary documents for the City Council approval. Signed, Danny Palumski, Chair, Scott M. Levin, Vice Chair, and Norm Leader.
Okay, to put this before council, I ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Palumski, second by Alderman Levin. Alderman Palumski, your report.
Thanks, Mayor. So this is a traffic request for, or a request from residents who approach staff because of an intersection that has no signage. So it has no stop signs, it has no yield signs, which we do have around town. Staff did a traffic study and made a recommendation for yield signs, and then made additional recommendations for the adjacent intersection, the next intersection, based on MUTCD and their judgment, largely based on sightlines. But I can defer to Alderman Bram for questions.
Alderman Bram, you had a question. You pulled this report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, earlier this afternoon, I drove both intersections. The comments were in regards to, I guess, poor sightlines or line of sight. I would say that it is adequate line of sight, and the report or the documentation states that it was, I don't know, between 75 feet and 90 feet, something along those lines. Both of these intersections, as Alderman Palumski has stated, they are both uncontrolled intersections. The recommendation or the report makes mention that the Niagara/Stratford intersection should also get yield signs due to the fact of the commonality in the neighborhood. The MUTCD specifically states that one intersection does not contribute to a decision on a neighboring intersection when it comes to traffic control devices. I say that again, does not contribute. We've used, or that argument has been used multiple times here when debating traffic control devices or traffic control signs, but it clearly states that that should not be the case. Also in the report, it references the Paul C. Box, I'll call it an article from, I believe it was 1995, so close to 25 years old. And I believe that the city has utilized that from a standpoint of defining what poor or adequate line of sight is. In that is those dimensions or those numbers of 75 or 110, I think they say is excellent, something along those lines. I don't have that in front of me. But both of these intersections have clear line of sight. I think they range between 75 and 90 feet. The accident history on the one intersection, which is Niagara and Hillcrest, there were 2 accidents this year, but within the last 5 years, there were just those 2 accidents. And I don't want to trivialize any accident, but that is the only evidence that there's ever been an issue. It has not been addressed in the report or any of the information I read on this issue, that those 2 accidents, I think they were 2 back-to-back months, would be correctable with utilizing yield signs, especially because a yield sign is pretty much the same thing as an uncontrolled intersection, according to the rules of the road, that you are supposed to give up the right-of-way to the traffic to the right of you. So an uncontrolled intersection is providing some guidance if everybody is obeying the rules of the road. So I am definitely concerned with putting yield signs in either of these intersections, but especially Niagara and Stratford, since there was absolutely no study done on that intersection. Just a reference saying that there are sightline issues, which I've already stated, to what I have read by the Paul Box report and the MUTCD, that those sightlines are fine. But also there's no accidents, and we don't even know what the traffic count is at that intersection. At least with Niagara and Hillcrest, there was a study, and we do have traffic counts for that intersection, albeit incredibly low. The Paul Box report says very low, and I forgot, medium or something past that. The Niagara side is in the very low, which is less than 100 ADT. The Hillcrest is, I think, just the low, because it's 179 one way and 147 the other way. I don't understand what we're trying to solve. There's no statement in here that, I know it was a request by the neighbors and the residents. The report itself references speed issues. It doesn't come out straight to say that was the rationale for the request. But the data that we collected, albeit traffic control devices are not meant to control speed, even that is incredibly low. The average speed, 19.2 one direction, 20.5, 23.1, 20.8, less than the posted speed. So I have not heard what are we trying to correct and how yield signs would correct either of these, what I would deem to say perceived issues at this time.
Any other comments? Palumski?
Thank you, Mayor. So this was brought to committee, and the recommendations were made solely by staff. There weren't any ideas to say, well, maybe you want to consider this option, although Alderman Levin did notice at one point the placement of a yield sign was not in the right spot. And
Alderman Palumski, can you please speak in the mic?
yes, sorry. This was the recommendation of staff. The weighing in from the committee came in the process when the original placement of a sign was in one spot versus the other. But staff said, oh, yes, that's what it should have said. Staff presented a threshold. They said that, that the site triangles should be, you should have 100 feet to 115 feet leg length, so you could, when it's an uncontrolled intersection, and these have between 80 and 95, so it seems to be pretty clear cut that there needs to be some kind of control at this intersection. There were 2 accidents that staff believed were preventable, and the idea to add in another one at the next intersection was based on the site and also the uniformity of the area as suggested by staff.
Any other comments? Alderman Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor. So, in general, I'm not a fan of uncontrolled intersections at all within Elmhurst. You know, predominantly from the standpoint is we have a lot of visitors in Elmhurst. You know, when my parents were living, when my family would come into town, you know, I was always happy when they didn't get, you know, T-boned, just thinking they had the right of way and not even thinking that they should be looking right or left or following, you know, particular rules that come with an uncontrolled intersection. So because of that, I do support this. I think it's a very reasonable approach to the concerns of the residents. Thank you.
Alderman Levin.
I just want to add, I mean, 2 things. One is, I personally, in my driving experience, find that a yield sign is different than an uncontrolled intersection, because if I'm not on the right of someone that has the yield sign, I'm not going through just because I'm on the right. I'm going to stop, and I'm going to let them go through because I'm going to yield because they have the yield sign. I will point out, just for information, the second intersection that Alderman Bram referred to is actually a T intersection, so it's really not going to markedly change the behavior at that intersection. Originally, when it came back from staff, it was erroneously stated that the yield should be on the perpendicular side as opposed to the, whatever you want to call it, the T side, and it was changed. That's what people would expect, is that when you come to a T, the person who's going to yield is the person who's coming into the two-way. So I don't think it's really going to markedly change any behavior there.
Any other comments? Alderman Bram.
Thank you. I'll just say that we make mention in regards to at least these 2 intersections that this is what staff recommended. I would say a couple weeks ago we ignored, or the consensus was, and ignored what staff recommended and didn't follow those recommendations. So we can't utilize staff recommends X and then turn around and ignore what staff recommends the following time. I think that there's at least a decent amount of an argument for the intersection of Niagara and Hillcrest. That is the intersection that had a study done. That, even though I don't feel that we should be utilizing an article from close to 25 years ago as guidance, instead of utilizing strictly the MUTCD, at least there's some data points that would give me comfort of moving forward with yield signs at that intersection. The intersection and the argument, or the data points of saying that the intersection of Niagara and Stratford, as Alderman Levin stated already, and I forgot to state, it is a T intersection. But the statements of saying that, well, other intersections in the area have yield signs, so that warrants it here, to me is nowhere close to sufficient, because there's other intersections in the area that are uncontrolled as well. So how are you basing that argument? Even if I was to buy into that argument, how do you base that argument when the same neighborhood has uncontrolled intersections about a block or two at most away. It's not making anything consistent because there are uncontrolled intersections in the neighborhood. So at this time, I'm gonna make an attempt to make a motion to amend to remove any and all reference of the approval of yield signs for Niagara and Stratford.
Let's be clear on the motion before I entertain a second. Niagara and Stratford. I see it in 3 places, City Manager.
I would say,
Is council comfortable understanding Alderman Bram's motion? Anybody need clarification? Basically, throughout the report, it says Niagara and Hillcrest and Niagara and Stratford. So we're removing all references to Niagara and Stratford. The motion is to remove all references to Niagara and Stratford and just approve yield signs for the intersection of Niagara and Hillcrest. Fair summation, Alderman Bram?
to make it easier, I mean, the recommendation's what's important, so it would, really, I think the guts of it would just to remove it from the recommendation.
Okay, I have a motion to remove Niagara and Stratford Avenue from the recommendation and all references. Do I have a second? Don't see a second. Motion fails for lack of a second. Any additional comments? Clerk Malone.
Deuter.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Bram.
No.
Polumsky.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Bluto, absent. Park.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy, absent. Honquest.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Mulner.
Aye.
11 ayes, 1 nay, and 2 absent.
11 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. On to agenda item 7.17. This is an ordinance, and that's Clerk Malone to read the ordinance.
An ordinance authorizing the purchase of property for stormwater mitigation.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve agenda item 7.17, ordinance 0-67-2019. Motion to approve. Motion by Alderman Mulliner, second by Alderman Honquest. Discussion.
I think it's important that I identify.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, when we purchase property, we identify it, so,
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, so this is a contract for the purchase of property at 633 Swain Avenue in Elmhurst. It's a single-family house being purchased for the price of $435,000 with a closing date of on or before March 15th of 2020.
okay. Motion to approve said ordinance. Motion by Alderman Mulliner, second by Alderman Honquest. Any comments? Alderman Bram.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick comments. I'm all for stormwater mitigation as much as we can. I served many years on the Public Works Committee. I did a referral, I don't know, probably 10, 15 years ago to do a comprehensive study of the city of Elmhurst in regards to storm and sanitary. Just to name one thing that to show on my attention to this very large and very serious issue. The only reason why I will not be supporting this is for the dollar amount purchasing said property. I believe we continually overpay for properties with the rationale of, well, it's for stormwater mitigation, and we might as well, because it's benefit to everybody. And albeit I agree that it's a benefit for the neighborhood, it's a benefit for the city of Elmhurst as a whole, I have asked on repeated occasions to do appraisals, so we actually have an idea if we're getting a decent deal and spending our taxpayer dollars wisely. But that has not happened. According to my research, and this is my personal research, so I did not do a comparative market analysis, but I did look online, and I believe we're paying somewhere around, where is it here? Up to about $60,000 more than we need to for this piece of property. I think that we need to purchase the property. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but I don't think that we need to continually to overpay for stormwater management, because the residents that we're buying the property of know what we need to use it for. But that doesn't mean that they or anyone should be getting significantly over what I believe to be either the appraised value or market value. Thank you.
Any other comments? Alderman Levin.
Well, I think it's important to note that we do have, although we do not obtain a formal appraisal, we do have a real estate professional on staff who gives us an appraised value so that we know the ballpark of what we are looking to purchase, or the price at which we're looking to purchase. Second, this is not a situation where if you make a bid on a house and you feel that the person who's selling is asking for too much, you can go buy another one in a different neighborhood. These particular parcels, and this one specifically, was targeted because it's adjacent to other properties that are required to do a large-scale stormwater project. So first of all, the advice we got is it's not 65,000 over. That may be your personal opinion, but that's not what the facts are that we're relying on. And second of all, if we pay a slight premium for it, and I think it is only a slight premium at best, it's well worth the cost to complete this project, because the alternative to what we're doing is to run a pipeline all the way down to Salt Creek, and it would cost $3 million more. So if we spend 25 or 30,000 more and save $3 million, I'd say it's a fair deal.
Alderman Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor. I very much agree with Alderman Levin. Just one correction, it'd be a $5 million savings, between the two projects potentially. This property plus 3 others on the block. I think if at the beginning of our search, if I thought we could find 4 houses within reasonable proximity, I would have said no way. So the fact that we're here, we're talking about it, it allows us to accelerate the project, the more expensive project, because we have to work with the county, and it's much more complex. It'd be a 3-year horizon, maybe even 4-year horizon. This property potentially allows us to design a project that will address the neighborhood in a very timely fashion relative to a 3-year horizon. So because of the economics, because of the time frame and getting the neighbors in this neighborhood relief sooner than later, it has my support.
Any other comments? Anybody else who hasn't had a chance to speak yet? Alderman Bram.
Thank you. The picture likes to be painted that I'm making statements that I don't make. I never said we shouldn't pursue and move forward with this purchase of this home sale. I never said that once, not in any of my discussions in regards to any project here at the dais or in committee or in executive session. I've never said that. I said we pay too much. And I say well, we continue to pay too much. And maybe Alderman Levin has more data than I do, but what was shared with me was a purchase price. No data to back it up from our city staff or our city staff consultant. No comparative market analysis. No appraisal. So I don't know what other data that may have been shared. I'm not saying it has been, but according to comments made, There's other data that this alderman is going off of that I don't know about. Because the data that I have been given has not included an appraisal, has not included a comparative market analysis. I've asked those questions. And it is said that we don't need it or it hasn't been done. So don't paint the picture that there's other data. That's why I do my own research. When I don't get what I request, I try to make a decision by doing my own research. And my own research says that we're significantly overpaying. If we wanted to actually dig our heels in the ground to say exactly how much we're overpaying, the information would have been done and given that an appraisal or at least a comparative market analysis to say what this need is or our excessive overpaying is. Is it 10,000 or 60,000 or somewhere in between? We're hearing even tonight the savings is 3 million or 5 million. The savings not that. Yes, that's a difference between one project or another. We're moving forward with the project of buying these homes in this residential neighborhood. So there's no savings. We keep making this reference that we're saving this. No, we've strategically done a very good job of purchasing property in the area to reduce the cost of a project that will benefit the neighborhood. Let's not compare $60,000 savings to $3 million. That's not realistic. That's not the truth. The truth is, I'm just making a statement to say that we are paying, and I believe, agree or not, I believe we're paying too much in excess for these properties. If I was given the data, it would be beneficial, and any one of us could say on how much that dollar amount is. But at least I have not been given that data from our city consultant or from anyone within City Hall to say how much. So my point is what I did, my research.
Alderman Mulliner hasn't had a chance to speak.
We hire a consultant at the city level who's an expert in real estate. That expert is there to assist us in the purchase of property, and he is consulted on a daily basis by the city staff to make sure that when we do a purchase, that purchase is a reasonable purchase and that it's not out of the norm. And that's what he is paid for. I have to make the assumption based on his knowledge base and his length of time of being involved with the purchase of real estate that he has a clear understanding of the values of properties within the city of Elmhurst. And so I'm going to go along with listening to the advice that he has given city staff, and I'm going to go along with what city staff has said, because this particular project is very critical on flood mitigation in the particular area that it is. And if he feels, our real estate consultant, after consulting with our staff, that this is an appropriate price for this property, I have absolutely no problem with that. I can go on Zillow and tell you what they paid for a piece of property. That doesn't tell me what the value of that piece of property is. And I know that a number of ways that you can do it. You can do it through Zillow, you can do it through a dozen other ways, but that's not telling you what that property is actually worth. It's worth what its purpose is going to be there for and why we need that piece of property. So when my real estate consultant, who we've hired as a city, comes and says to our staff, this is the right price or close enough to the price that I think we need to make the purchase, and I think that it is yes, I agree, it's not necessarily a savings, it's a reduction in the cost of the project, and there's no question that this is a much better project than running a pipeline all the way to Salt Creek. So I am wholeheartedly in support of purchasing this property at the appraised value that we've been given, and not necessarily a formal appraisal, but the value that we've been given by staff.
Alderman Levin.
Thank you. I wanted to add one point, and it actually ties in with what Alderman Mulliner said. Our real estate expert on staff tells us that we are not paying a ridiculous amount, but the feature that we're missing in this discussion is it's not a one-sided transaction. It's a negotiation, and our staff negotiated very much, very long, I don't know how to say this, there was lengthy and sophisticated negotiations. If a seller doesn't want to sell to us, the alternative is to do an eminent domain proceeding, which is costly and lengthy, and you still may wind up paying just as much. So when the consultant tells us we're in the ballpark, and we go out and we do a tough negotiation, and after many weeks of negotiating, we settle on a price, that's what it's worth. It's what a willing seller will sell to a willing buyer under these circumstances. So that's the most important feature here, is that if we didn't come up with that price, and I know exactly how we got there, the seller wasn't interested in selling. So we paid what we needed to pay to get this property, which we need. We don't need a house that's in the next block. We don't need one that's across town. We need that one that's right next door.
Any other comments? Clerk Malone.
Deuter.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
No.
Palumski.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Saludo, absent. Park.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy, absent. Honquest.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Mulner.
Aye.
11 ayes, 1 nay, and 2 absent.
Jim, is a supermajority for purchase or sale of property?
Sale. Supermajority. Sale.
Or supermajority is only for sale of
Only
property?
for sale.
Yeah,
It's a
okay.
purchase straight majority.
11 ayes, 0 nay, 1 nay, apologize, 11 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. Agenda item 7.17 is approved.
Point of order.
Yeah.
I believe the discussion that was being had is exactly my point of order, but since I didn't hear it, I just want to verify. It does not need supermajority?
Sale of
Only the
property, sale
ordinance?
of property does, purchase of property does not. So that was the point of order. The question is whether or not a simple majority vote is okay to purchase property, and it is. On to agenda item 8, committee reports, 8.1. It's a report out of DP&Z. I'd ask Clerk Malone to read the recommendation.
Therefore, the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee recommended that the City Council opt out of the sale of recreational cannabis. The city attorney is hereby directed to undertake all necessary actions, including a referral of the matter to the city's Planning and Zoning Commission for consideration of amendments to the city's zoning ordinance and to otherwise prepare the necessary documents for City Council approval. Signed, Michael Honquest, Chair, Mark Molnar, Vice Chair, and Bob Dunn.
Okay, to put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Honquest, second by Alderman Mulliner. Alderman Honquest, your report.
Thank you, Mayor. As I think everyone's aware, the subject has been in the news quite a bit, and what each and every community chooses to do. This is our report recommending against selling cannabis or approving a dispensary, I should say, in the city limits of Elmhurst. I had 3 reasons. I can let my colleagues speak if they want to add to it, but the first, as we researched this and discussed it, this is a very confusing and poorly written law. You can purchase marijuana in some places within Illinois. You cannot necessarily, if it's allowed by those communities, you cannot necessarily smoke it wherever you want. As a matter of fact, as you dig into law, about the only place you can smoke it is in your house. Even in your backyard, if you're by someone that's 21 years of age or younger, that's against the law. I'm not quite sure how the police could enter a person's property when they're legally buying something and then smoking in a place that is therefore illegal, even though it's their property. Are they supposed to arrest the person? I don't know. It's very confusing. As one of our residents spoke out, and as the mayor, I'm sure, can add detail to, the state is supposed to bring it back and try to address some of these issues, but I'm not being asked to make a recommendation on something that has not yet been adjusted. I'm being asked to make a recommendation on what's before us, and what before us, in my opinion, and those of the committee, is a poor law. Second, it is a cash-only business. It's still cannabis illegal at the federal level. in a state that has had a history and still has, in current form, a tremendous amount of corruption. Cash-only businesses make me nervous, given the fact that a dispensary cannot use the banking system and has to deal only in cash. That's not particularly a business I want to support at this time. And third, I represent the 6th Ward in Elmhurst, and I think most of us have a sense of the community, and it's been my impression talking to people, this is something they do not support. So as an elected representative, I agree, and at this time, since the state is allowing us to choose whether we want to support a dispensary or not, it is my opinion that we do not, as long as it's up to the city of Elmhurst to so choose. Those are my 3 reasons. I don't know if my colleagues want to add, but I would just ask your support for this report in its current form. Thank you.
Any additional comments? 111.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't agree that I wouldn't hang my hat on the fact that it's a poorly written law. It may be. Other municipalities will move forward, and I'm sure many will. I think some of them in the immediate neighborhood have. I'm not concerned that it's a cash business. My firm has about 15 attorneys that are in the cannabis, I know what you call it, specialty, in Michigan, other states. Everyone deals with it. But I do agree with the committee, and you only have to agree on one point, that it's not what Elmhurst wants. I look back at video gaming. Other communities did it, and Elmhurst didn't want it. I concur with Chairman Honquest. Everyone I've talked to said no problem with it. Some of them might be people who will be users. They'll be spending their tax dollars in other communities because they don't want it here. So we don't have to be first in. If you don't like the law, if you don't like the cash business, you don't have to go in now. Times may change, but here we are in 2019, and this is not what I'm hearing from people in the city of Elmhurst.
Any other comments? Alderman Dunn?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, we are recommending the report that the committee's put forth is recommending to opt out. We do have that opportunity to do that the way the law is written. We're aware that some other communities nearby are not doing that, so it will be easy to travel to another community to purchase cannabis for recreational use from a dispensary, and then use it, as Alderman Honquest said, in your own home. So, we're aware of that. We don't, we really expect any revenue from the sale of cannabis in Elmhurst to be infinitesimally small, I should say. It's not something that we'd be moved towards because of a financial driver. I don't think that is there. It's not significant enough to consider that. So we feel, again, that it's not a fit at this time. It's something that we could reconsider in the future, depending on how things go in other communities. But at this time, I think it's best to opt out at this point.
Alderman Muller.
I agree with everything that's been said. I just want to make sure that everybody is very clear on what's going to occur now. Basically, what we're making a recommendation to is that the attorneys move this forward to the zoning commission, because in order for us to properly opt out of this, it needs to go to the zoning commission, and there needs to be a series of text amendments done. So therefore, there will be going to the zoning commission, so people will see this again, because we'll be making changes to opt out of each one of the different zoning areas where sales are appropriate, to make sure that it's in our code in the proper way. So the attorneys will be helping us with that, and that's why it's stated the way that it is, that the attorneys are going to take the lead on the next steps on this.
Anyone else? Okay, Clerk Malone, I ask you to call the vote.
Deuter.
Aye.
Sabatino.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Paludo. Absent. Park.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy. Absent. Honquest.
Aye.
Brennan.
Aye.
Mulner.
Aye.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Agenda item 8.1 is approved. Okay, on to reports and recommendations of appointed elected officials. Mayor Morley, that's me. First thing I'll report on is the legislation, or the report we just approved for opting out. I sit on the DuPage Mayors and Managers Legislative Committee. It's a, what do we call it, Committee of Government? Council of Government, where I sit on a committee of my peers, a bunch of managers and mayors. And the law is confusing, and it is going to be worked on during veto session, but the one thing that's clear and the one thing that we fought for, it was mentioned earlier that Pritzker ran on this, and we're in a one-party state, we know this. So it was a foregone conclusion if Pritzker won that this was going to happen. The one thing we concentrated on in the Legislative Committee and DuPage Mayors and Managers as a whole was to make sure at the very least the opportunity for towns to opt out was available. And there's a lot of parts of this law that are unclear or ambiguous. But the one thing that is not ambiguous and unclear is our ability to opt out. That's the one thing that we fought for, to have part of this law. We're going to continue to make sure that that doesn't change in veto session. So I applaud the committee. I fully support council's recommendation on this, and we'll see it going through the system. A couple other things. We have a latex paint recycling event at the Public Works Garage on the 19th from 8 until noon. So bring your paint. There is a fee associated for dumping your paint. Fire Department open house is on the 13th of this month at Station 2. Invited for all the public. That's from noon to 4. Come out and see all of our great firefighting apparatus. Is that the correct way of saying it? And our new truck, which is probably about a year and a half old at this point, but fully operational. Fantastic new piece of equipment. Finally, last and not least, I've got this beautiful piece of hardware here that I want to, I'm going to break that. I'm just going to give that to the city manager right now. So I mentioned I was part of DuPage Mayors and Managers, the city of Elmhurst is, and every year they have an innovation award where you make a presentation about a certain innovation that you have made in your town, and your peers evaluate and vote. And I think they've done this 6 years or 5 years?
5 years.
5 years, and I'm happy to say that out of the 5 years, Elmhurst has won the Innovation Award 3 times. So this really is, it's not one of those awards we're all in professional associations where, you know, you write them a check and you get an award. This is not that. This is actually an award where you're evaluated by your peers and they do a vote, and I'm happy to say that we won. We won for neighborhood roll calls, which we do with our police department. There's a way to integrate and allow our residents to meet our police department. We won for our rapid response vehicle, which is our SUV that runs around and has full life support on it, but just can't transport, but it's cut down tremendously on delivering services to our residents. And this, we have won for basically water management. So we presented two things. You only have 3 minutes. I'm like that, remember that speed talker in the 70s? That's about how I present, with city manager kind of gesturing the stuff in the background. But this was a water leak detection program and our Water Smart program. So council is aware that we have the largest fixed leak water detection system in the United States. Basically what it does is we deliver water to all of our homes and businesses, et cetera, and we have a way to hook up electronically sensors all over Elmhurst. And they kind of run on this radio waves or some sort of wave that Howard would tell you about. Anyway, they can listen to the system. And if there's a leak that happens, they know what normal sounds like and they know what abnormal sounds like. So if we get a leak in our system, instead of waiting for that leak to run days or weeks or months and then bubble up and then we have to take care of it, not only is the leak problem usually bigger by the time it's visual, we've lost a lot of water. So in this case, we actually have this system where it kind of sounds like a whistle to the system if we have a leak in our delivery system. And what happens is, even if it's overnight, our public works guys come in the morning and they get a report, and attached to that report is a Google map with a red dot, and within 2 feet or 3 feet of that red dot, we've detected a leak, and they go out and fix it. And it's absolutely fantastic. Not only are we not waiting for it, we can do it on regular time. What would you rather do, city manager, repair a leak at Tuesday at 2 o'clock or New Year's Eve at 11 o'clock?
I think you know the answer.
I think it's a little cheaper and a little easier for us to get a handle on if we schedule it. So this program not only has helped with our labor costs, but has saved us like about $1 million in the first year we've had it in just on saving water. So we've got that, and we combine that with our Water Smart program, which I want to harp on, because the most disappointing fact I had to give to my peers was only 24% of residents have signed up for Water Smart. If you've ever got a water bill that you didn't like, you now have a way to monitor that on a daily basis, and it's free. So I encourage all residents to please go on the line like those kids do, go to the city website, look up Water Smart, and you can sign up and monitor your daily water use. So if you have a toilet that's running that you don't use, or you left the sprinkler on or something else, or you're on vacation, this is going to tell you that you have a problem. So not only is it green and it saves water, but it's also going to save you money. So I'm very happy to say that through a lot of hard work, through city staff and this council, we have a Water Smart program, we have a leak detection program. It's literally saved us over $1 million, and we have an award that our peers think we deserve. So that's my report. City manager.
I don't know how I could possibly follow that up, except to also thank Paul Burris, Mike Litwin, and Tristan Laguerre, all from our staff who made the presentation, I thought, pretty funny. But maybe it gained us some votes, I don't know. But thank you, Mayor, for presenting that to everyone there. It's really an honor that the group would recognize us for that.
Okay, anyone else? Any other reports?
Oops, other business, sorry.
You're okay. I see Alderman Deuter there. She's got her hand up. You okay with that, Alderman Polomsky? All right. Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to offer a brief report on an event recently hosted by the Elmhurst Public Arts Commission. As part of its mission to promote existing public art, the commission invited guests and offered tours of the extraordinary art collection on display at the Elmhurst College Library. The college's collection of 170 pieces by Chicago imagists and abstractionists has been called the finest of its kind and has transformed the college library into a museum, one that is open for free to the public during regular library hours. The collection includes pieces that have traveled to prestigious national and international exhibits. The tours for the event were led by Sue Ellen Roca, one of the commission members, who is the curator of the collection and is herself a Chicago imagist. She shared insights of the pieces, many of which were created by her friends and colleagues. The college prepared a 6-minute video of the collection that was shown at the event and is now available on the college's website. We often hear about the gems of Elmhurst, and it's clear to me after the tour that the college's art collection is one of them. It's noteworthy that a few other gems were also showcased by the event. 1, unique offerings that include an art museum and a college. 2, the strong partnership between the city and the college. And 3, involved, passionate, and talented residents. I'd encourage anyone looking for something interesting to do to stroll through the college library. The library is located on Prospect Avenue, just south of Alexander, and the building's main entrance is on the west side of the building. As a reminder, City Council created the Public Arts Commission in 2018 to promote existing public art installations and to procure and implement new public art installations throughout the city. I'd like to acknowledge the Commission's 9 talented and hardworking members and congratulate them on a successful event. Thank you, Mayor.
Fantastic. Just to add to that, I had an opportunity to attend this event, and it was wonderful. It was actually very surprising. One thing I'll mention is Alderman Deuter mentioned Sue Ellen Roca, who's the curator there, but she's also an impressionist, and this whole impressionist movement, or imagist, I'm sorry, imagist. There's this whole movement that happened in like the 60s and 70s, and the Chicago imagists were kind of an opposite of what was going on in New York. And there are, out of this group, there are 6 impressionists, am I using it? Imagists, God, I keep getting it wrong. There's 6 imagists who created this working group called the Harry Who. And if you go online, look up Harry Who, like Harry, like H-A-I-R-Y, not H-A-R-R-Y, Harry Who. They came up with the name themselves. But not only is that famous, world-renowned, Sue Ellen Roca, who is the curator, is also one of the 6 Harry Who imagists. So it's just fascinating. Alderman Deuter couldn't have put it better. It is a gem that I didn't even know existed until that night, and the tour was just eye-opening. And I would encourage you all to go. It was absolutely fantastic and a great introduction to the commission, for the commission to the community. So thank you, Alderman Deuter, for your hard work, and thank you to the commission. So, anyone else? No? Any other reports or recommendations? Alderman Dunn.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to point out that we had a Fly Quiet committee, subcommittee meeting on October 1st, and then also last week, the full ONCC commission meeting. We continue with the Fly Quiet committee to work on departures and preferred directions upon taking off. So that we hope that'll be part of the Fly Quiet plan when that goes forward. We are going to probably talk to the CDA and their consultant, Lambert and Brown, about those departures. They requested input, and we will probably submit some more input to them on that. Organizationally, there were some changes to the Fly Quiet Committee. That was a committee that first had 9 representatives. It got a lot of interest because of the nighttime noise that they were investigating. It was expanded to 11. Elmhurst was afforded a seat on there. And then recently, with some of the fallout of the elections, Ward 45 in Chicago, the sitting alderman, Alderman Arena, he lost to Alderman Gardner. So that Alderman Gardner has taken this on that slot on the Fly Quiet Committee. Ward 41 was represented by Kathy Dunbar. She resigned, and that particular slot was then moved to Park Ridge, which we were happy to hear because they have a similar concern as us with diagonal runways. So we're happy to see Park Ridge get on the Fly Quiet Committee. I think that's good news for us. So we have a collaborative colleague on the committee now. So that's my report on the ONCC. I did want to mention also regarding bees, we approved residential beekeeping, I think it was earlier in the year, and we did have one application and installation this year, I'm told. And then we had one application, but I think they didn't set up a beehive. So hopefully we'll get more interest in future years. The last thing I want to mention is, probably should have mentioned this in announcements, but up in the second ward, I'm in the second ward, Throw Nation just opened about a week and a half ago. The Arena Sports Bar was sitting idle for quite a while. It's a big property, big building, big property. So we're happy to see a new entity there, and I happened to stop by and last weekend, and it was quite crowded. I think they're doing well, and they're ramping up, so we wish them well as they grow their business in Elmhurst here.
Did you throw an axe, Alderman Dunn?
I didn't do it that night, but I have in the past.
Okay. Any other reports? Alderman Levin.
Thank you. The Fifth Ward meeting is October 29th at 7:30 at the Knights of Columbus at, I believe it's around the 529 or something South York. So all Fifth Ward residents are invited to come out and speak with the alderman. And any other aldermen want to come and heckle us? You're invited too.
Okay, any other reports? Any other business? Alderman Polomsky.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the words you said about Patty Spencer tonight. I appreciated her dedication to her responsibilities. Got a kick out of her excitement for the petition process and people running for office. And I, too, was a beneficiary of her counsel. I do remember one of the first things she said to me was, after I was elected after a contested election, she said, I believe you'll be an independent voice for us. But one thing that sticks out for me, and I've thought about a dozen times since this happened just a few months ago, is the grace that Patty exhibited in response to a resident calling the public access counselor at the Attorney General's office. Patty had always taken her annual renewal training and completed that for Open Meetings Act, as she, as her clerk, was the OMA officer. And she'd always done that. And once that year time came up, once it was 30 days outside of that and she had missed it, a resident called the Attorney General's office. So we had a staff person went to her home, brought a laptop, and read the questions and the training to her because she couldn't see, and helped her answer the questions because she didn't have the mobility to answer. She was fatigued and had to rest during it, but she completed it. And so, going back to the piece that said, maybe I would be an independent voice, I thought maybe I'll say the things that I've been thinking, and one of them is this. I think everybody up here is trying to meet our obligations and do what we're supposed to. And yes, we're not always right. But if anybody has a concern that relates to us dotting the I's or crossing the T's, you have the absolute right to call and file a complaint, or you can connect with the city to see if maybe you can find out a little bit more about it, talk with staff, talk with an alderman. And again, nobody knew this about Patty. She was a trooper, finished it up, and that is the thing that will stick with me forever. Thanks.
Okay, any other business? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Alderman Mulliner, second by Alderman York. I thought you were pointing at someone. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.